All right, what is up, everyone? My name is Chris, and today, basically, I've been thinking about these like the round robin games that the Flyers are gonna have to play. And they said that to determine the seeding in the playoffs coming up, that you're gonna have to play, each team that is out of the top four. So the Flyers are gonna have to play Boston, Tampa Bay, and the Capitals. These are three tough teams. Now, the Flyers. It's so tough with these teams because they play good really against all of them, to be honest. And when I say like played good, it's like some games they played better, some games they played worse. Obviously, as many of you know, they played really good against the Capitals. They won the season series versus Washington 3-1, and two of those games being on the road, one of them being at home as well. They played really good versus Washington. And at some points, they blew them out. I mean, they beat them 7-2. They beat them 5-2. They beat them 3-2 at home. And then they also lost 2-1 in a shootout at home back in November as well. And I thought they played really good in that game, too, even though they lost. I thought they played good because the thing was that if you remember, the first period was a little iffy that first game versus Washington. And then the Flyers kind of started to pick it up and pick it up and pick it up. Finally tied it in the third period. Braden Holtby was very good that night. And then the next three games, the Flyers were really able to solve Holtby and also Ilya Samsonov as well. You know, he came in at one point, and the Flyers played really good versus Washington. As for Boston, obviously you see here all of the records and points for these teams. Boston being 1, Tampa being 2, and the Caps being 3. The Flyers having 89 points, 1 point behind the Capitals for first. So I think the biggest thing out of this is that really all three of these teams have coaching depth and experience, all three of them. Tampa Bay being one of the best teams in recent years, and sadly they didn't get as far, but made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2015, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2017 and 2018, and they've had some really good teams in recent years, and they have really good players. They just can't get over the hump. They kind of remind me a lot of the Capitals from years back. Obviously, the Capitals winning the Stanley Cup in 2018, Boston being one of the best teams going to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, ended up losing to St. Louis in 7. These are all teams that have the coaching, the depth, and the experience. It's going to be tough. It really is. And honestly, it's 3 games. I think the Flyers really have to have their A game. I mean, obviously, we all know how Boston is. You obviously have the line of Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrnak. They have their depth. As for Pastrnak, he's tied for the Rocket Richard this season. Tuukka Rask, he's just unreal. And if anything, they have a good backup in Jaro Halak to come back if something happens with Rask. And that's going to be a tough game as well versus Boston. Tampa Bay is going to be tough too. That 1-0 game that the Flyers played versus Tampa where they lost, I thought they played good. Vasilevsky, unreal, absolutely unreal in that game. I didn't really think the Flyers played bad. It was just Vasilevsky was too good. That game really reminded me of the 2-0 loss versus Boston. And another thing was, too, is really all 3 games versus the Bruins were good as well. And the thing was against Boston was that the Flyers played good. And all 3 games were a good game where it was like, I guess you could say, it was a good hockey game, but they were like somewhat high scoring. Obviously, you have the 6-5 shootout game where Marchand skates over the puck, right? That's probably the best moment from the Flyers season. And that was a game where the Flyers found themselves down 5-2 at one point. And then the other game in Boston back in November in the back-to-back when they played Boston and Toronto, the Flyers have a 2-0 lead. They let it slip away. There's a penalty shot for Pastrnak in the last couple minutes of the game. Carter Hart makes the save, and the Flyers won in the shootout. That was a very good game, and I thought the last game the Flyers played of the 1920 regular season versus Boston they played good. It's not like they played bad. Rask was just very good. That's what happens when a goaltender can steal games, and that's what happened there. And really, 2 instances I think of that is that 1-0 game versus Tampa and the 2-0 game versus Boston, where 2 games where the goaltender stole the game. And honestly, I think the biggest thing from that is just if the Flyers can somehow find a way to get the first goal. Like as you saw by the thumbnail and the title of this video, what record will they get? They could get a mixed record of anything. They could lose all 3 of these games. They can, win all 3 of these games. They could split. They can go 1-1-1. They can go 1-2-1. They can 2-1-0. 2-0-1. Whatever. Personally, I think that they're going to go 2-1-0. I'm going to say versus Boston, they're going to lose in regulation. I think they're going to beat the Capitals, and with a very bold prediction, I think they're going to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. I really do, because I didn't think they played bad against the Lightning at all this season. They had a rough first period in the second game in Tampa, and they played good in the last 40 minutes. If you have a 60-minute effort versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, you will win. That's the thing. And I think this Flyers team is good enough to where they can win. It might sound biased. I don't really care. I've watched this team long enough to know what games that they can win and what games they cannot. And personally, I feel like that the Flyers are going to go 2-1-0. I'm going to say a loss versus the Bruins, a win versus the Washington Capitals, and a bold prediction win versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. So let me know what you guys think below. What happens with the Flyers? What do you think on the record, the lineup matchups, and all that stuff? But again, let me know what you guys think below. And remember, podcast articles, those links are on my channel. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you guys in the next one, and goodbye.